In the last video I put out, I made this little bowl and I used OSMO as the coloring on it. And I wanted to try something else with it because it was the first time I did it. I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I made this spindle. I turned the spindle, I divided it into 8 sections, and I put Minwax Wipe-On Poly over top. Now one thing that I didn't expect, I've got this sanded to 120 grit on one end, 400 on the other end, and other grits in between. And when I run my hand over it, this came as a surprise to me. I can't feel the difference between the 120 and the 400 end. So I'm thinking that the poly must have filled all the pores and then leveled itself out. And it's just a beautiful finish. The only time I've used it before, I've always sanded up to 400, maybe 800 or more. And of course it feels great there, but it does all the way down. So I'm really surprised by that. Anyway, let's take a look at how I turned this. If you want to avoid that, just jump ahead 4 minutes or so and get into where I'm doing the OSMO. Let's go over to the lathe now. This spindle is 40 inches long, so the further I get away from either end, the more chance there is of flex, and I can actually feel some in here. So I think I'm going to round it over in one spot further along here and put my steady rest in there just for a little support. This is just a test piece, but I still like to try to do the best job I can on anything I do. Alright, with the steady rest on here now, this should make a bit of difference. Give it a try. And now I can just flip this spindle end for end and do the other end of it. Some pretty rough spots in there, but that's not really going to matter much to me. I'm going to sand it as well as I can and start dividing this into some quadrants. After I got the spindle turned to where I was satisfied with it, I used my skew chisel and I cut grooves every 5 inches in here. So that gives me 8 quadrants. Then I went over it and I sanded the entire thing to 120 grit. Then I sanded from here over to 150 grit, from here to 180 grit, and I ended up with 120 grit, 150, 180, 220, 240, 280, 320, and 400. Now, from one section to the next, you can barely feel a difference, but between one end and the other, there's quite a difference. The reason I did this is I want to take the OSMO and color everything, and then I want to see when I sand it again, just probably with 320 or 400, I want to see if it takes the color right off, how much it's penetrated, where there's a difference in penetration. And that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to take it over to the lathe, put it back on, and put the OSMO on. I'm hoping to do the whole thing in one color, but I don't know if I've got enough. Those sachets are pretty small. However, I've got a couple of different colors. I'll see what comes up. Alright, I'm going to use the red OSMO. I've squeezed all of the contents out onto this wax paper because it just makes a mess trying to get it out of here, as I found out in the last test. Now I'm going to use the OSMO Super Pad, a small piece of that. I wasn't sure I liked this last time. Might have preferred paper towel, but it's what they recommend, so I'm going to go with the recommendation. This is going to be spinning at 250 RPM. Fast enough to do the job, and hopefully not fast enough to splash it all over the place. And I'm just going to dip this in here and start applying it. It's supposed to go a long, long way. I'm going to speed this up to 500 just to see if it'll spread it a little easier. I see a light spot there. Just add a little more. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to give it some time to dry, and I'll be back. I want to do some sanding on here now. I usually have my dust hood right behind here, but that will block the view. So for just this one section, I won't be using a dust hood. There's going to be dust everywhere, but I will be using my air helmet, my air shield. So I'm going to sand this one at the 120 grit that it's at now. See what it looks like, and then I'm going to go through the grits and take this right up to 400. See if the color is on there deeply enough to stay there and what kind of finish I can get. So I'm going to reposition the camera so I can zoom in on this a little better, give you a better look. I'll be right back. Okay, I can tell already it's taking off more than I really want, so I don't think that sanding this is a good idea. I think what I'm going to do is switch this, turn the spindle end for end, easier than turning the camera to another position, and I'm going to do the 400 grit end with 400 grit sandpaper and just see if it smooths it out or if it even needs it. I'll be right back. I'm not sure this even really needs sanding, but I'm going to give it just a very light 400 grit sanding, and then I'm going to put Wipe-On Poly on everything and see how it looks. Alright, I'm going to do the Wipe-On Poly, find out what kind of difference that'll make. I'm going to be using Minwax Wipe-On Poly in a clear gloss finish. I'm going to be turning this at 250 RPM. I put a little on the end of this bit of shop towel and then just apply it as it's spinning. Now you can only see the first two sections here, but I'll be back to show you the whole thing when I have it finished. Well, there you go. It's finished, and I'm very happy with it. I'll certainly use OSMO again. I quite like the color, the way it comes out, now that I know better than to sand it after I'm finished with it. It's a nice, easy product to use. It's not cheap, but it goes a long way. I was really surprised how much was in that little sachet that it would do this whole thing, and I actually did it twice. So I'm very pleased with it. I enjoyed doing this. I hope you enjoyed watching. So if you haven't subscribed in the past, please consider doing so. Have yourself a great day in your shop and be safe. Thanks for dropping by. I hope you'll be here next time. Take care now.